He thought they were just hungry kids. Out on a dusty fringe world market, a human wanderer named Jace flipped sizzling flatbread over a rusted grill, laughing as three small aliens with shimmering eyes begged for extra sauce. He fed them like it was nothing, like kindness was simply what humans did. What he didn't know was that their mother could vaporize a star fleet with a gesture. And when she realized a human had cared for her children without fear, without expectation, everything in the galaxy shifted a few degrees off its axis. Because sometimes the smallest kindness sparks the biggest consequences. Hey, before we dive deeper into this wild cosmic story, if you're enjoying these human versus the universe moments, hit like so more people can find it. And subscribe if you want more tales where humanity surprises the galaxy in the best possible way. If something catches your attention or gives you chills, drop in the comments. Your reactions make these stories even better. The heat on Revar, 9 rose slowly, like a giant exhaling across the markets. By midday, the metal stalls were too hot to touch. The air shimmered with dust, and most travelers stuck to the shaded walkways, except for the lone human who insisted on cooking outdoors like he was back on some old Earth Street corner. Jace leaned over his portable grill, flipping flatbread with the confidence of a man who had burned his fingers 100 times and learned absolutely nothing from it. The smell of sizzling spices drifted across the market square, pulling in curious noses from half a dozen species. Humans were rare out here, but a human who cooked? That was almost a tourist attraction. He didn't charge much. Honestly, he could have charged more, but Jace wasn't the type. He sold food because people looked happier when they ate. Simple as that. He liked seeing the way strangers relax, how a hot meal softened the world around them. In a galaxy where entire star systems argued about borders and fleets, kindness felt like a quiet rebellion. The first hint that today would be different came in the form of a soft chirp. Then another. Then 3 small shadows stretched across his counter. Jace looked up and nearly dropped the bread. Standing there were 3 children, not human, not even close. Their skin shimmered like opal stone under bright light, shifting from silver to blue as they moved. Their eyes were too large for their faces, ringed with a soft gold glow that pulsed like little suns. They wore matching cloaks, dusty from travel, and all 3 stared at the food with the same expression, hungry, hopeful, and maybe a little lost. Jay smiled before he even realized he was doing it. Well, he said, you 3 look like you haven't eaten since ever. The tallest one chirped again, pointing shyly at the sizzling pan. The smallest tugged at the edge of the counter, trying to peek over. They didn't speak standard. That much was obvious. But hunger didn't need translation. You want one? Jace asked, already grabbing an extra flatbread. 3 heads nodded vigorously. That's when he noticed something strange, something he probably should have reacted to more cautiously. The crowd around the market had subtly shifted. Traders lingered a little farther away. Conversations dropped to hushed tones. A pair of armored freight guards glanced nervously toward the children, then quickly looked away. But Jace wasn't paying attention. He wrapped the food in paper, crouched down so he was eye level with the kids, and handed it over. The way their faces lit up, it was like watching 3 tiny galaxies brighten all at once. There you go, he said. Eat slow. It's hot. They did not eat slow. They inhaled the food with pure joy, chirping excitedly between bites. One of them, Jace couldn't tell which was supposed to be oldest, actually did a little hop dance of happiness. And maybe he should have wondered why 3 unsupervised alien children were wandering a dangerous fringe world market. Maybe he should have noticed how everyone else kept their distance. Maybe he should have wondered why their cloaks were woven from a fabric far too fine for ordinary travelers. But he didn't, because Jace had a soft spot so large it practically needed its own seat reservation. He made them another batch, and another. By the time the children were full, he'd given away half his day's stock. He didn't even mind. Their laughter made the heat feel lighter. When they were finally done, the smallest one stepped forward, placed a tiny glowing hand on his wrist, and chirped something soft, almost melodic. A thank you. He didn't need a translator for that one either. You're welcome, Jay said, smiling. Come by any time. But as the children scurried off, weaving between crowds with quick silver steps, the mood in the market shifted again. A trader approached Jace's stall slowly, like trying not to spook him. "Human," the trader murmured. "You fed them?" Jace blinked. "Yeah? Why?" The trader's skin paled to a worrying shade as she whispered, "Do you not recognize their markings?" Markings. Jace looked down at the counter where the kids had stood. Nothing but dusty footprints. Just look like hungry kids to me. They're not just kids. The trader swallowed. Those were royal crest bearers. Jace lifted a brow. Royal like nobility? Royal, she repeated, her voice dropping to tremble. Like their mother commands 5 sectors and a military so powerful could erase this entire moon in an afternoon. Jace blinked again. Oh. The trader leaned closer. If those are truly her children, and only the imperial heirs glow with that light, then she will be looking for them, and for the one who cared for them. That sounded dramatic. Too dramatic. Jace waved her off with a laugh. Relax. I fed some kids, not a Starfleet. But the trader didn't relax. In fact, she backed away from him like standing too close might get her vaporized by association. Jace sighed, rubbed the back of his neck, and turned back to his grill. He was still laughing to himself about royal airs when the sky above Ravar 9 changed color, not metaphorically, literally. The blue atmosphere fractured into streaks of violet and gold as a shadow fell over the market. Massive, silent, and unmistakably the shape of a battle cruiser descending through the clouds. The kind of ship that only one woman in the galaxy had permission to fly. High Empress Veilshan, the most powerful woman alive. And Jace, without knowing it, had just fed her children lunch. The market froze. Every creature, every trader, every guard dropped to their knees as the cruiser's engines roared overhead. Everyone except Jace, who stood behind his grill, spatula in hand, staring up his ship so huge it blotted out the sun. He whispered to himself, "Right, so maybe she is coming for me." And the moment the landing ramps began to lower, Jace felt it in his chest, that quiet, dangerous truth. This was no longer a normal day. This was the beginning of a story he had never asked to be part of. The landing ramp touched the ground with sound that felt less like metal and more like a warning. A hush swept across the market, so complete that even the dust seemed to hang in place. Jace stood frozen beside his grill, hands still stained with spice, as the cruiser's engines powered down with a low, resonant hum. He had seen ships before, freighters, patrol vessels, even the occasional diplomatic shuttle. But this one was different. Its hull wasn't painted. It glowed, engraved with shifting patterns of light that moved like living threads. The symbol of the High Empress blazed along its side, unmistakable, unchallengeable. From the ramp, soldiers emerged first, tall, armored, and moving with military precision. Their armor wasn't the usual alloy. It was a sleek black overlaid with rippling bands of silver energy, like starlight trapped in motion. Their helmets extended into pointed crowns, marking them as Imperial Guard, the kind of soldiers the galaxy feared. Their boots hit the ground in perfect rhythm. Not a sound from the crowd. Then the air changed, thickened, heated, and she appeared. High Empress Veilshan did not walk. She descended with the gravity of a collapsing star. Her presence pressed against the senses, a physical weight of authority that made even the guards straighten further. She was tall, taller than most humans, her silhouette framed by a cloak woven from threads that shimmered like galaxies. Her skin bore the same luminous quality as her children's, but deeper, richer, accented by lines of burning gold tracing down her arms like constellations. Her eyes scanned the market. It wasn't anger on her face. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. Cold, sharp, searching. Jace swallowed hard. He wasn't hiding. Mostly because hiding behind a grill the size of a small table didn't feel particularly dignified. But he quietly set down his spatula in case he needed to use both hands to beg for mercy. One of the guards stepped forward and boomed, "Clear a path for the Empress." The crowd scrambled back, forming a wide corridor. Jace ended up standing at one end of it, alone, painfully visible. Veilshan began walking toward him. Each step was measured. Her gaze locked on him like she was reading something only she could see. Jace tried not to panic, but panic politely insisted on being involved. Okay, he thought. Just explain. Tell her they were hungry. Tell her you're not kidnappers or rebels or whatever interstellar threats she deals with. Tell her, but when she stopped 3 feet in front of him, his brain decided to take a short vacation. She regarded him in silence. Then she spoke. You are the human who fed my children. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried, rolling across the marketplace like distant thunder. Jace cleared his throat. I mean, technically, yes. They, seemed hungry. A soft ripple of shock spread to the guards behind her. Humans were not supposed to speak so casually to the Empress. They were not supposed to speak at all, unless spoken to with ritual phrasing. Veil-Shan tilted her head, studying him. You gave them food without knowledge of who they were? Yes, ma'am. I just fed them. Why? He blinked. Because they were kids. The answer was simple. Too simple, maybe, but it was the truth. And something about that truth, its lack of calculation or flattery, shifted the Empress's expression. Not much, but enough that the lines of gold around her eyes softened. Show me. Jace hesitated. Show you? The food you made for them. He exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Oh, sure. Yeah, I can do that. He turned back to his grill, ignoring the way the entire market held its breath. He could feel her presence behind him, an enormous, burning force that made the hairs on his arms stand upright. He worked quickly, flipping dough, brushing sauce, sprinkling spices, doing what he did best, making something warm in a cold universe. He offered her the finished flatbread with both hands. Veil-Shan examined it, like it was a diplomatic artifact. Then she took one slow bite. The change was subtle but unmistakable. Her posture relaxed. Her eyes brightened. Something inside her face, something that had been locked tightly for years, unclenched. She took another bite. Finally, she said, "This is comforting." Jace blinked. Comforting. In my position, she said quietly, comfort is rare. It was the closest thing to vulnerability a figure like her could ever show publicly. The guards shifted, uneasy. They weren't used to seeing their ruler in anything resembling a human moment. Then, without turning, Veil-Shan raised her hand. 3 small streaks of silver shot forward from the crowd, her children, rushing straight toward her. They chirped excitedly, tugging at her cloak, pointing at Jace, babbling in their melodic language. They were telling her about the human who fed them, who smiled at them, who saw them as more than heirs. Veil-Shan listened to every word. Then her gaze returned to Jace. You cared for them when others feared to approach. It wasn't a question. Jace shrugged lightly. Fear and kids don't mix. The Empress stepped closer, so close he could feel the energy radiating from her skin, like standing in front of the sun wrapped in flesh. You have earned a debt, she said, one I do not offer lightly. Jace's eyes widened. Wait, no debt needed. Really, feeding kids isn't. It is, she interrupted. In this galaxy, genuine kindness holds more value than all the fleets I command. Her children chirped in agreement. And then the Empress, the most powerful woman across 5 star sectors, did something no one expected. She bowed her head, just slightly, just enough to stun the entire market into absolute disbelief. Human Jace, she said softly, you have my gratitude. The words echoed, not through sound, through history, because an empress bowing to a human was the kind of event that shifted political gravity, the kind of moment that made enemies lean forward, allies whisper, empires tremble, and somewhere in the distant reaches of space, the first ripples of this moment were already spreading outward, toward people who would not be pleased. But here, on Revar 9, Jace could only stare at the children hugging their mother's legs and the Empress, who regarded him with unreadable, powerful eyes. He had fed 3 hungry kids, and now the galaxy was watching him. The galaxy did not react quietly. News of the Empress bowing to a human spread faster than any official message ever could. It leapt from relay to relay, whispered across star routes, broadcast an encrypted chatter among governments that pretended not to fear her. By nightfall on Revar 9, 1,000 ears across 1,000 worlds were tuned to one question. Who was this human? Jace didn't know any of that yet. He was still in the market, trying not to hyperventilate as the Imperial Guard formed protective perimeter around him. Shoppers who had once browsed casually now watched him from a distance, their expressions a mix of awe, envy, and the kind of curiosity that felt dangerously close to gossip. One brave vendor approached the guard and asked, "Is he her consort now?" The guard didn't even look up. No, but the way he said it, short, sharp, didn't help. In fact, it made it worse. The whispers grew. Jace pinched the bridge of his nose. Great. I fed some kids, and now I'm apparently marrying their mom. Perfect day, really. Incredible. A guard next to him cleared his throat. The Empress requests your presence inside the cruiser. Inside? Me? His voice cracked like a teenager's. I mean, okay, sure, but, does she want me alive? The guard blinked at him. Yes. That's good. Cool. Love that. Jace followed them up the ramp, each step feeling strangely heavy. The cruiser's interior was breathtaking. Towering ceilings, walls shimmering with embedded circuits, and air that smelled faintly like cold starlight. The ship felt less built and more grown, organic in its curves, alive in its energy. They escorted him to a large chamber, where Veil Sean stood at a circular table, holographic projections floating above its surface. Stars, fleets, diplomatic channels, entire strategies woven like constellations. Her children sat nearby, legs swinging, still glowing faintly. When Jace entered, Veil Sean dismissed half the projections with a flick of her hand. They shattered into light. "Human Jace," she said, "you have become the center of an unexpected situation." "Funny," Jace replied. "I was just thinking the same thing." Her lips almost twitched. Almost. She gestured to the holograms still floating. "Word has already spread. Some factions believe I have chosen you for political favor. Others fear you have gained influence over my heirs. Some," her tone tightened, "consider this a threat to their own ambitions." Jace blinked. "Over meal? Kindness is more dangerous than you think," she said, "because it cannot be controlled." Her gaze held his with gravity that made him forget to breathe for a moment. "Your actions," Veil Sean continued, "have forced political lines to shift. I must decide how to present this event to the galaxy, and I require your cooperation." Jace rubbed his temples. "Let me get this straight. I feed some kids, and now governments think I'm what? Influencing you." "Possibly. That's insane. Not in the eyes of those who fear me." Her children chirped from the side, waving at him. He gave them a small smile, and their cloaks shimmered with excitement. Veil Sean watched the interaction, something thoughtful flickering through her expression. "You did not hesitate," she said. "Most species would not approach my heirs without permission. Even fewer would do so without seeking advantage. I didn't know who they were," Jace said quietly. "And yet," she replied, "that honesty is why the situation is now volatile." Jace exhaled, letting the truth settle. "So, what do we do?" The Empress circled the table, each step measured, almost soundless. "There are 3 paths," she said, activating 3 separate holograms. The first projection, a recording of him feeding the children, grainy but undeniable. I could declare this an official diplomatic interaction. Formal, controlled. You will become a symbolic figure, an example of interspecies goodwill. Jace cringed. "So, a mascot?" "Essentially." He winced harder. The second projection showed news broadcasts, angry council members, and military fleets mobilizing. "Or," she said, "I silenced the reports, claim the incident never occurred. That will lead certain factions to assume you've been executed." "That option's a hard no," Jace replied instantly. "Very, very hard no." Veil Sean inclined her head. "I thought as much." The third projection was blank. "This," she said, "is the option I prefer. I tell the galaxy the truth, that a human fed my children without fear, without motive, that your kind is capable of compassion without calculation." Jace stared at the empty projection. "That seems nice, but also won't it still cause problems?" "Yes," she admitted. but it is the truth with the least destructive consequences. He hesitated. What happens to me? You remain under my protection. Protection from who? She waved a hand, and suddenly the hologram filled with faces. Politicians, mercenaries, warlords. Every one of them marked with threat indicators. From everyone. Jace's mouth went dry. Why would they care about some nobody cook from Earth? Because, she replied, stepping closer, her voice lowering, the last time I bowed to anyone was 18 years ago. To a dying mentor. The galaxy knows this. Oh, Jace whispered. Yeah, that's a problem. Her children chirped, climbing onto her cloak, tugging at her hand and pointing at Jace again. Veil Shan rested a hand on each of their heads, her gaze softening. They are attached to you, she said. The smallest chirped enthusiastically. And because of that, you are now in danger. Jace swallowed. So what? You're offering protection? I am offering inclusion, she corrected. A place within my jurisdiction, safety under my banner, access to my resources, and a chance to help me reshape the narrative instead of being swallowed by it. Jace blinked. That sounds like a job offer. It is, she said simply. He stared at her, at the children, at the swirling holograms, at the future pulling toward him with gravitational force. I was just trying to feed some kids, he murmured. And that, she replied, is why you're valuable. A distant alarm chimed. A guard rushed in. Empress. Hostile transmissions detected approaching the system. Multiple signatures. Veil Shan did not look surprised. Those, she said, will be the first ones to believe you've gained influence over me. Jace felt a cold weight drop into his stomach. And what do they want? To kill you, she said calmly, and use your death as political leverage. Jace stared at her. She stared back. Human Jace, she said softly, you must decide quickly. He drew a slow breath. Okay, he whispered. What do you need me to do? The desert night was too quiet. Silence like this didn't happen on Earth anymore. Not after the invasions, not after the ash rains, not after humanity learned that the universe listened when they screamed. But here, in the barren stretch outside the fallen arc city of Sarah Prime, Min-joon walked as if the sand itself were waiting for him to speak. Above him, the stars flickered in a broken mosaic. Because even the sky wasn't honest anymore. Half of those stars were scorched war beacons from dying fleets. The other half were the enemy, watching. Min-joon tightened his grip on the plasma staff. The pack better be alive, he muttered. Hope was a fragile thing now, but it was still his. Behind him limped Rhea, the last surviving cub of the predator pack. Her fur, once dark gold, was streaked with soot. She was barely half his height, but her presence felt massive. She never cried, never asked him to slow down. She followed like she had sworn her whole future on his steps. Ahead, the wind shifted, carrying a metallic scent. Not sand, not rain. Ships. Min-joon lowered into a crouch. Rhea mirrored him instantly, a soft growl escaping her small throat, deeper than something her size should ever make. He smiled faintly. Good girl. You sound just like your mother. At that, the cub's ears drooped, grief flickering in her eyes like a dying spark. He reached and brushed her head. She's not gone while you're still here. The sky tore open. A rip of red energy crackled, followed by descending shadows. Enemy boarding drop pods. Hunters. The word tasted like iron. These were no ordinary soldiers. These were the Devourer's own, the strongest unit of the alien empire that turned planets into empty bones. They were here for one reason. Finish the pack, erase the last bloodline of the only species that dared challenge them. A pod slammed into the ground 30 meters away. Dust shot upward like an explosion of ghosts. The pod peeled open. A towering creature stepped out. Skin metallic blue, arms plated in bone ring armor, eyes glowing like twin embers of a dying sun. Rhea whimpered. Min-joon stood. The hunter growled, a language that sounded like tearing steel. It pointed at Rhea. Cub, surrender it. Min-joon spat the sand. Come take her. The hunter's second eyelid blinked. You defend the dying species? Humans are weak. Min-joon's laugh was sharp, humorless. Humanity doesn't die quietly. You should know that by now. The hunter charged. Min-joon moved at the last second, sand scattering under his boots. His plasma staff meeting alien bone with scream of heat. The impact shook his arm to numbness. But he didn't fall. Rhea darted around him, leaping at the hunter's leg and biting deep. The hunter roared, kicking her away. She tumbled hard across the sand. Rhea! Min-joon didn't think. He attacked. Again. Plasma flashed blue-white, carving arcs in the darkness. The hunter's claws sliced past Min-joon's face, close enough to burn. Human, stop. No. He drove the staff forward with every last ounce of strength, piercing under the hunter's chin. A burst of light shot out the back of its skull. The body collapsed at his feet. Min-joon staggered. His breath heaved. Rhea? He ran to her. The cub whimpered, unable to stand. He lifted her carefully. You're okay. Stay awake. But the sky wasn't finished. More pods descended. 10, 20, a raining swarm of death. Min-joon's heart hammered. He couldn't fight that many. He couldn't run. There was no shelter. The universe had cornered them. Rhea touched his hand weakly, as if telling him she knew, as if telling him she wasn't afraid. No, he whispered. No, we're not done. Not yet. He set her on the sand gently. Then he rose. Slow, deliberate. The pods opened. Rows of hunters marched out, surrounding him in a tightening circle. One stepped forward, taller, broader, carrying a halberd of scorched alloy. You are the human who killed Carvan, it said. Min-joon shrugged. Name tags aren't really my thing. You stand alone. He smiled. That's the funny thing. He lifted his arm. A signal blinked blue on his wristband. A second later, the desert floor began to vibrate, low at first, then building, then thundering. From the darkness emerged shadows, massive ones, eyes shining gold, bodies moving like a storm of living muscle and fury. The pack, the survivors, the mothers, the elder males, the half-grown cubs, dozens of them, limbs scarred, fur dirty, but alive, and behind them, towering above all, the ancient Alpha, her mane flowing like molten stone, a beast whose roar had once shaken mountains. Min-joon pointed his staff toward the hunters. You wanted the last of the pack? The Alpha stepped beside him, lowering her head in a gesture no predator ever gave a human unless they recognized them as kin. Come and try. The desert ignited in sound. Roars. War cries. The clash of bone and steel. Min-joon charged with the Alpha at his side. Humanity and Predator merged into one unstoppable force. The hunters tried to break the line. They failed. The pack tore into them with ancient savagery. Min-joon fought like he had nothing left to lose because he didn't. For Rhea. For the pack. For every last star who thought humans should kneel. When the final hunter fell, silence returned. This time, not the empty kind. A sacred kind. Min-joon knelt beside Rhea again. The Alpha approached, lowering her massive muzzle. She nudged the cub softly. Rhea's eyes fluttered open. She croaked a tiny growl. The Alpha rumbled back, a sound of pride. Min-joon exhaled. See? Told you're not alone. The Alpha looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something no human had ever recorded in any archive, ever witnessed in any war, ever believed possible. She bowed her head. To him. Min-joon blinked. What is that for? The pack's oldest male interpreted in rough human tongue. Human save child. Save future. Save pack. Another voice added. Human is pack. Min-joon looked at the cub in his arms, then at the silhouettes of the entire species standing around him, wounded, exhausted, surviving. And for the first time in what felt like years, he felt a faint spark of something dangerous. Something powerful. Something the universe had always underestimated. Hope. He stood. Rhea curled against his chest. The pack gathered behind him. The stars flickered overhead, no longer watching, no longer threatening. Tonight, the universe learned a lesson it would never forget. If you push humanity to the edge, they don't fall, they rise, and everything that stands in their way falls.